Well, hey everybody, I'm Nick Pettit, and I am at NickRP on Twitter, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a workshop on Bootstrap 3. Bootstrap, of course, is a CSS and JavaScript framework that was originally created by Twitter. I believe they still maintain it. I think they do. I actually don't know that. I should. But we're going to take a look at Bootstrap. We're going to go over just a couple of the major highlights, and then we're actually going to try to build something in Bootstrap. And then after that, we're going to do a little bit of QA. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at Bootstrap. You'll want to point your browser at getbootstrap.com, and you'll come to this page, and there's just a big download button there, and that will download Bootstrap 3 in one convenient zip file. However, there's a couple of other ways to get Bootstrap, so let's go ahead and click on Getting Started here. And it says, of course, you can go ahead and download it. You can get it from GitHub by cloning or forking it. You can install it with a couple of different package managers, or you can get it over a CDN, which is a content delivery network. So it's hosted over at NetDNA. And you can go ahead and just include these links directly in your website. That's actually what we're going to be doing today. And then you can also compile it using less, which is yet another way of doing it. So there's a couple of different ways that you can go ahead and get Bootstrap here. And they tell you what's included. You get this CSS file called bootstrap.css. You can also use some Bootstrap theming if you'd like. There's some JavaScript. And then it also comes with glyphicons or glyph icons, which are basically just a really nice icon set that you can go ahead and use for free. So that's pretty cool. And one more thing, jQuery is required to use Bootstrap. So you have to go ahead and put jQuery into your site before you include the Bootstrap JavaScript. So we'll take a look at that as well. Down here, they have a really basic template. If you just want the absolute bare bones Bootstrap experience, you can go ahead and copy it straight from here. And that will give you the latest and greatest Bootstrap. Actually, you do need to download Bootstrap if you're going to use this template. So if you just go ahead and copy this template, you want to make sure that you also grab these CDN links up here as well. Then, even further down, they have a couple of different examples. So let's go ahead and look at some of the things that Bootstrap can do. Bootstrap has a fairly robust grid system. There's a couple of different components, so let's look at those. We want to look at a really nice example of navigation here. And let's see, there's kind of a marketing page, there's a carousel, and there's some Bootstrap theming. So let's look at each one of those. So here's the grid system. And what's really cool about Bootstrap is that by default, it's already responsive. So you can just go ahead and resize your browser window here, and you'll see how these columns collapse down. So here's 3 equal columns across the page, and when we get down to a mobile size, you can see that they stack on top of one another. So that's really nice because so much time building modern websites is spent making it responsive, but Bootstrap gives you all that for free. So that's pretty handy. Bootstrap uses, I believe it's 12 columns across. Yeah, 4, 8, and 12. So you have a 12-column layout, and there's probably a couple different ways to subdivide that further, but we're not going to get quite that advanced today. Next up, we have a couple of the components here. So here's what a more advanced Bootstrap layout looks like. Once again, you can see that we're using 3 columns here. So down at the bottom, there's a couple of columns, and then we have this little widget that's called a Jumbotron, which spans the full width of the page and allows you to kind of highlight really important messages. And up here at the top, we have some static navigation. Now let's take a look at that. Here's an example of what a nav bar looks like. You can have some nice links here up at the top, and you can also have these nice little drop downs, and you can even put some headers drop downs. It's pretty cool. Here's an example of what a marketing page might look like. Again, it's responsive-ish. Well, it usually works, I promise. But anyway, that's kind of what a marketing page looks like. Here is a carousel widget, which we'll take a little bit more of a look at in a minute here, but you can go ahead and slide through stuff just like that. It's pretty cool. More marketing stuff. You can see how easy it is to lay out pages that look like what you might be familiar with on, say, Apple's website or something like that. And then here's just one more example. You can see what a couple of the different themes look like. So we have some nice buttons here. We have some alerts. There's various progress bars, different styling for lists. You have panels, wells, all sorts of stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into the CSS here and just take a look at some of the documentation that comes with Bootstrap here. It says, first of all, you do need to be using an HTML5 doc type, so that's important. Also, I mentioned that Bootstrap is responsive. It's actually mobile first, though, which means that it's built with mobile devices in mind from the start, and then it works its way up to larger devices. So that's pretty neat. Here's a little note on how to make images responsive. So if you do want an image element to be responsive, you need to go ahead and add this class here, image responsive. And then there's a couple of other things here. Here's a note about using the container element. You can easily center a page's contents by wrapping its contents in a container. So that's good to know. We'll use that shortly. And then there's a bunch of stuff about the grid system. We're not going to get too advanced with the grid today. We are going to be using the grid when we do build a little website here. I'll show you in a minute. But we're going to use this column medium quite a bit to lay out our grid. So you can see, again, what the grid system looks like when it's all laid out there. Now here's what some of the markup looks like. Bootstrap uses this concept of a row, and you have these divs with the class row, and they wrap various columns here. So here it looks like we have 12 columns that are each 1 unit in width. And there you can see those spanning straight across in a nice neat row. The next row is 8 across and then 4 across. Again, these are all adding up to 12. And there you can see that row right there. So that's kind of how you build up the grids in Bootstrap. You have these rows and then you fill them with your columns, and each row should add up to 12. So we'll get into that shortly here. We're going to keep zooming through here. We're not going to nest too many columns, at least I don't think. Hopefully we won't nest any. Keep things simple today. Comes with really nice typography. So if you just go ahead and use the headline elements H1 through H6, they'll automatically be styled for you. So that's some really nice default styling. They also apply some default font sizes and line heights to everything in the body along with paragraphs. So it already looks pretty nice. You can add this class lead if you want a line to kind of be the lead line or the leading line for a story, similar to what you might find in a newspaper. You can also use the emphasis and strong elements, so that's good to know. There's a few alignment classes, so if you just want to align things to the left, center, or right, you can do that. We'll probably do a little bit of that. You can color code things. There's abbreviations, addresses. We're moving kind of quick here. Want to get to building stuff. You can also do code, so if you want to show blocks of code, that's easy to do. Bootstrap has really nice default styling for tables, really nice default styling for forums, and there's also the buttons, which we saw earlier. Images you can make rounded, so you can make them completely circular, or you can have these nice rounded corners, or you can even have a little bit of a border there. And then there's a few helper classes and responsive utilities. We may need to use those, but probably not. We're going to build some pretty simple stuff. So let's take a look at some of the components, and then we're going to take a look at JavaScript, and then we'll get into it. So components, it comes with these glyphicons or glyph icons, which I mentioned earlier. So you can just go ahead and apply these pretty easily to just any kind of span or element, and it will automatically include these right into your web page. So that's pretty nice if you need to use an icon really quick and you don't need a huge amount of them. They got pretty much everything you might need here. So that's cool. Next we have some drop downs. We saw those earlier. You can make button groups, button drop downs, which I think is kind of strange personally, to have a drop down that's also a button. I think that's kind of weird. I tend to avoid those. We also have input groups. We saw the nav bar earlier. We're going to use that. You can create these breadcrumb trails. That's pretty cool. And there's a couple of other things here. Media objects. You can make nice lists. Get the idea. Now, with JavaScript, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do here. We're really not going to use this much today either, but you can make these nice tooltips on any side. You can do modals. Where's the modal? There it is. So if you wanted to have a modal element, you can say launch demo modal. Look at that. And you can fill up the modal with anything that you'd like. And then finally, have the carousel here. We saw this earlier. This is really cool. You can go ahead and just drop in images. You can drop in text or whatever you'd like, and you can have a nice carousel on your website. So, Bootstrap does a whole lot of stuff. We're not going to use all of those things today, but what we are going to do is rebuild one of the projects that we build on Treehouse. Now, if you're a Treehouse member and you've gone through the Build a Simple Website project, you've probably built the website Smells Like Bacon. Now, Smells Like Bacon is basically just a website for an imaginary bakery or a brick and mortar business. And it has all the things you'd expect, and it also uses kind of a grid-based layout. So there's some nice illustrations, there's navigation, and there's, a whole bunch of stuff that would be really good to build in Bootstrap. So let's go ahead and take a look at that website. I have it all loaded up here. I downloaded it from the Treehouse site at teamtreehouse.com, and you can see the logo. There's some links here. We have kind of a call out here, so maybe this would be a good place to use that Jumbotron and a lead. There's a button here. Doesn't look quite like a Bootstrap button, but we can restyle it to make it look that way. Another illustration over here. And then we get into more of a grid here where we have a couple of images, some text, and then there's also two columns here. So it looks like really what we're looking at here is a two-column layout. Here's the first column where we have this text, this image, and then some more text. And then here's the second column. Got some text, image, more text. So I think that's kind of how we'll construct things with our layout. It also looks like this would be pretty good to build with a two-column layout as well, albeit slightly different. And we may even use columns at the top. I'm not sure. We'll have to kind of dig into the code to decide if we want to do that. Now there's a lot of imagery here. So we have all of those assets downloaded already. So we have a good head start on that. Yeah, I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the code. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to open up my terminal. To do this on Mac OS X, you can just hit Command Spacebar, type in term or terminal, and you'll pull up a window that looks something like this. Next, you need to navigate to the directory where you have your website. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my dev folder. And on every Mac, it comes with Python. There we go. I was just using the up and down arrow keys to cycle through commands I'd used recently. And with Python, you can start a simple HTTP server. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, if we're just looking at HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, why do we need to start a server? And really, we could probably get away without doing this. We probably don't need to actually start a server, but I'm going to anyway because it's going to keep us safe from a couple of different, cross, oh gosh, the name escapes me, like cross-asset issues or cross-JavaScript issues or something like that. I think it's like cross-domain policy is what I want to call it. But anyway, it's going to allow us to just work with the files a little bit more easily. So again, this is an optional step. You don't have to do this. You'll probably be fine without it, but I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway. So now at localhost port 8000, I have my little Python server here, and here's the website we were just looking at. So that's where I have all of my code. And let's go ahead and open that up. I'm using a text editor called Sublime Text 2 here. And here's what index.html looks like. So here is index for smells like bacon. And you can see we're already using a grid system. Let's go ahead and open up grid.css just so you can see. Oh, whoops. Where is that? Is it in style? No. Did this move? I think that's what happened. I think it moved. So I need to actually open this back up. Sorry about that. So there's index, there's grid, there we go. Wonderful. So here is our very rudimentary grid system. And it's not nearly as advanced as Bootstrap. It's basically just setting an explicit width on each element. It does a couple of things like setting the elements to display block, floats them to the left, so you can go ahead and create a pretty simple grid system. Bootstrap is much more robust than this. There's a lot more code. So let's go ahead and open up Bootstrap just so you can see what that looks like. So let's see, do I have Bootstrap already downloaded? I do not. So let's go ahead and download Bootstrap here. Again, we're going to use the version from the CDN, so we're not actually going to... oh, there it is. It already unzipped. Did I click that? Yeah, I did. We're going to use the version from the CDN, so we're not actually going to use these files here specifically. But I just want you to see what this looks like. So we're going to go to dist for distribution, and then we're going to open up CSS and JavaScript here. So let's open up bootstrap.css, and let's open up bootstrap.js. Now you might be wondering, what the heck are all these other files here? Well, this is basically the entirety of the Bootstrap project. So if you actually wanted to compile from the less files, you could go ahead and do that, and it has a couple of other readmes, licensing, a bunch of other stuff. That, if you're just an end user of Bootstrap, you really don't need. So don't worry about all that other stuff. We can just go to distribution and take a look. So here is what Bootstrap looks like. And when you open it up uncompressed like this, not minified, you'll see that it is almost 7,000 lines of CSS. So quite a lot of stuff here. And that's why we have that nice friendly documentation, because without it, it would be almost impossible to use this. It would be impossible to know what all of these classes do, where they all go, how they should all be used in concert with one another. Fortunately, we have that documentation, and we also have examples. If you look at the JavaScript, pretty similar story here. Looks like there's, look at that, exactly 2,000 lines of JavaScript. More specifically, this is all jQuery, and you do need to include jQuery, as I mentioned previously, before you include Bootstrap. So we're not going to take a tour of the code. We're going to actually use this code. So let's go ahead and close that out. And I am going to make a new folder in my dev folder here. So let's see, where did I put that? It's on users. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my sidebar here so I don't get lost. There we go. I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm just going to call it smells like bacon. And I'm going to save a file here from Sublime Text, and I'm going to call it index.html. Now, we have two options here. We could go ahead and just modify the Smells Like Bacon website, right? So we could go ahead and take this and try to cram Bootstrap in here and then just modify all of these classes. But I think that's actually kind of complicated, and I'd much rather just start from scratch and try to duplicate some of the stuff that we've done here. Now, I should point out that this isn't going to be perfect, so we're not going to recreate the site exactly as you see it, but it'll be pretty close, and we might not even finish in the time that we have today, but we'll get as far as we can, and then we'll take some questions. So let's go ahead and copy that example from the Bootstrap site. Let's just go ahead and get this basic template going. So let's copy that into there. There we go. And now I'm going to replace all of these links with the CDN links. So let's go ahead and do that. So there's my JavaScript. And that needs to go right here. Here is my CSS. And let's see, that needs to go right here. And then you'll also notice that we're including jQuery already, and we're also including the HTML5 shiv and respond.js. So those are optional. They're there if you want to have IE8 support. I'm actually not going to mess with them today. You should do that in a production site, but we're going to keep things simple for today. Just going to remove some of these comments here, just to kind of clean things up. And there we go. I'm going to change the title here first of all. And let's see what the title is of our site as it stands now. Title is Smells Like Bacon Cupcake Company. Okay. And we're probably using some Google fonts in here if I had to guess. Yes, we are. So let's go ahead and grab those because we'll need those later on. So that should come after Bootstrap. So we've now included a font, which we'll use in our CSS later on. And now we need to actually make some structure to this project here instead of just having this index file. So let's go ahead and actually open up the folder in Sublime Text. There we go. And we're going to create some more folders here. So we want image, and then we also want CSS. And one thing I am going to copy wholesale is all of the image assets, because we're going to need all of those. So let's go ahead and stick those in there. There we go. And the CSS, I don't think we need any of the stuff. In fact, I'm pretty sure normalize is included with Bootstrap. I wouldn't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it is. It looks like there's also some images in the CSS folder, some background textures and things of that nature, so we'll need those. And then we also want to grab, actually I think that's it. There's style.css and grid.css, which we certainly don't want. So really, the only stuff we'd need are in index and style at this point. So we're not going to copy all of these wholesale, but we will use them for reference. And as you can see, style.css is actually pretty simple. There's not a whole lot going on here, but we'll go ahead and kind of copy those as we need them. Over here, we need to create some new files for our website. So I'm going to make style.css inside of my smells like bacon CSS folder. So style.css. And actually, I think that's it. Yeah, because there's no JavaScript. So cool. So there we have our style. Let's go ahead and include that. Just going to copy this because it's handy. And that will come right after our font, because we're going to use our font in this style sheet. And let's just make sure it's being included properly. Well, actually, let's just go to our browser and open that up and see what it's looking like. So if we go to localhost port 8000, just going to close that there. Go to smells like bacon. Hey, it looks like a website. Let's make sure our CSS is being included properly. I'm just going to say body, background, orange. This is going to look really ugly, but yes, it's there. Wonderful. I'm going to change the tab size here to 2, and I'm going to indent using spaces. That is how I roll. It's just a preference. It doesn't actually affect the functionality. So there we go. Okay, cool. Now, let's go ahead and lay out our HTML here. We need to lay out basically a grid system that matches up with smells like bacon. So I'm going to open up another tab here and go back to the website. And we're just going to approximate these things. We're not actually going to get them exactly right, but we'll get close. So up here at the top, it looks like we have the logo and we have a nav bar. So I believe the classes we want to use for that are nav. Actually, I think if we use an unordered list, that'll get us a little bit further here. So we'll use an unordered list for nav. And the list items we need are actually just right there. So let's go ahead and grab those. And you'll see that Bootstrap is actually fairly intuitive. The class navigation is, or the class nav is a Bootstrap class, but it's what we were already using in our Smells Like Bacon website just because that's a very common class to use. But it does mean something in Bootstrap. Let me see if I can go ahead and look that up. I believe it's under components, navs. Yeah, there's nav. And then there's a couple of different types of nav we can do. We're going to do nav pills and go with that for now. That may or may not look good. Let's do that. And then we also need to contain all of this. So let's go ahead and create a class called container. There we go. And that's going to wrap our entire website. Cool. We'll change hello world here to be smells like bacon. And let's just see how far that got us. Okay, it's still orange. Not digging that, but there we go. Cool. So it looks like that's starting to come together. Let's go ahead further down the page here. And next I need to create a row. And then inside of that row, I need to create a couple of columns. Now, I can't remember the column names exactly, but if we go to CSS grid system, it's called, yeah, column dash MD, and then the number. And if I had to guess, I would say that this is like 8 or 9 across, and this is like 2 or 3 or something like that. So let's just go ahead and go with 9 and 3 for now and see what that looks like. So there's 9, There's 3, and there's probably, I think that's just an image there. Yeah, let's go ahead and just grab that image, and we'll drop that in right there. There we go. Oh, hey, look. I was guessing, but it's actually right here, 9 and 3. Let's see how neatly that matches up with Bootstrap. And we'll just go ahead and grab the text from here. It looks like it's an H1. There might be something a little bit nicer we can use there, but let's just see what that looks like. There we go. Hey, look at that. It's kind of, sort of starting to look like a website. You know what will really sell this is if we actually get the background in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now. So yeah, there it is. The font as well, the font color, the background. Look at that. It's all right there. I'm just going to steal that, put it there. And now we have what's starting to look a little bit more familiar. It doesn't look like it's applying the font to the H1, so we may need to fix that, but that's okay. So far, so good. All right, well, let's keep building this grid. Let's not get too distracted. We have a pretty large row here. So it's one row with 2 columns, and yeah, those columns are just stacked. There's not anything nested inside there. So we can just go ahead and drop that right in. Okay. So after the row here, I'm going to create another row. There we go. And let's take a look here. If I had to guess, I'd say this is like 8 and 4 or something like that. Let's cheat a little bit here and see what this says. I'm seeing a 4 and an 8. Man, this grid is bizarre. Well, we'll see how this turns out. So we're going to do it our own way here and just say column 8. Close that up. And then one that's 4. And that will add up to 8. And there's some text we can put inside each one. So let's grab that text and just see if, let's see, we want cupcake of the week. Cupcake of the week. There we go. Oh, and then there's an image below it. All right. So we'll grab that. There we go. Let's tab this in appropriately so we know what's going on. Okay. And then there's other stuff below that we want to grab. Actually, yeah, let's just go ahead and do all of it all at once here. Let's grab that. And we'll just put a space there so we know, that we have that block of text, we have image, and then we have some more text here. And I'll just scooch this over. Okay. And it's been a while since we've refreshed, so we're kind of flying blind here, but I don't want to refresh yet. I want to fill the rest of this out and see how accurate we can get. So the next one is fresh out of the oven, and that's going to go inside here. So again, we'll tab this appropriately. There's the 2 images there, and then there's text at the bottom. Get bacon with us. Hey, hey. Get it? Okay. There we go. Oh, okay. So there's contact. There's this thing, the header, and then there's some other information there. And then there's the footer down at the bottom. Okay, got it. Again, we'll do a similar thing. Just space these out so that we kind of know how these elements are being pieced together. So that all goes together. This all goes together. And yeah, I think that should do it. So let's refresh, cross our fingers, see what happens. Not bad, actually. I think we got pretty close. There's some stuff that's a little strange here. There's some styling that's missing. Our font is only being applied to paragraphs and not headlines, but that's okay. So far, we're looking pretty good. There's some stuff that's still broken, but let's go ahead and try to fix that. So, first thing I'm noticing is this navigation, and we need to probably put these into columns, I guess. It looks like the split here is something like 4 and, I don't know, 8, I guess. I mean, it looks similar to the split here. Actually, let's just look at that split really quick. Man, that's super wide. I wonder if we could tighten up that grid a little bit. Let's go ahead and try to do that real quick. So, we said 8 and 4. I wonder if we did 7 and 5? If that would be better? Yeah, that's a little better. Not perfect, but better-er. So that's good. Like I said, this isn't going to be perfect. With more time, we could make it look perfect, but that's not what we're going for here. We just want to kind of get it together real quick. Okay, cool. So similarly, I would say up here, yeah, that's probably more like 7 and 5 because it's actually pretty close to the center here. So let's go ahead and split those into rows. So we'll make a row here, class, row, close that up. And then we need to make a div with the class column. And, oh gosh, we said 5 and 7. So my indentation is getting a little weird here. I apologize. We'll fix it in just a second. There's the other div. We'll say that's 7. And then we'll close it up right here. Oh gosh, we didn't close that row. Good thing I caught that. That would have been very confusing. Okay, so that needs to go in by 1, and then this needs to go in a little bit more. And I actually think these are in too far. There we go. Okay. Okay, let's see how weird that looks. Looks good. Not bad. Still some positioning issues, but we can fix those. You know what will really pull this together is if we get the logo in there. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, you'll notice that I have this H1 here. We do not have an H1 on the Smells Like Bacon site here. We just have this logo. Now, I could just go ahead and drop in this logo and be done with it. Bam. That's so easy to do. But I'm going to try something a little bit more advanced here. I'm going to add the class logo here. And I'm also going to include a first level headline. And we'll put back Smells Like Bacon. And there's a technique, I believe Jeffrey Zeldman was actually a champion of this. So let me try to find that. Let's see, Jeffrey Zeldman. There we go. And it's called, let's see, I think it's called text, hide text. There we go. Replacing the 999 pixel hack. So we don't want to indent text by nearly 10,000 pixels because it actually has to draw this massive box. Yeah, this 999 or 9,999 pixel box, which is not very performant. Instead, we can just use this little class called hide text, and it indents the text by 100% and sets the white space and overflow, so it kind of hides the text. I'm going to make my own edition here. So let's go ahead and jump in here. We'll add that class. And I'm going to say font size 0. Somebody will probably yell at me as to why this is not a good idea, but I'm doing it anyway. So no text. And if we refresh the page, it should look pretty much the same. I think we're going to have some margin added with that H1, but let's refresh and see. Oh, and hiding text did not work because I did not add the right class. Excuse me, hide text. There we go. And, hey, look, it's still kind of there. So maybe that's actually not the best technique to use in this case. Let me go ahead and see if that is indeed the H1 we're looking at there. Yeah, it is. Okay, well, that usually works. That's not really the point of this exercise today, so we are going to take the easy route there and just put in the image. Okay, sorry about that that total diversion there. Next, let's work on the navigation, because I think the navigation will help tie the site together a little bit more. Looks like it's using the right font. It's not using the right font size, and it's out of position, and it also has these kind of big hovery pill button link looking things. If we remove that, what does that give us? Does that just give us, okay, so, all right, so it's not actually just links. Is there a way in Bootstrap, I wonder, to just go ahead and make those look like links? There's probably a bunch of you shouting at the stream right now telling me how to do that. Let's see. I don't see it, so I'm actually just gonna kind of do it a little bit of a silly way. And I'm just gonna remove the styling on the nav pills. Actually, you know what? Well, yeah, I'm just gonna take away the nav pills altogether. And, well, no, I'm not sure how that's working. There might be some cool responsive stuff it's doing, so I am gonna keep it in. Sorry for being so indecisive. Okay, so let's go to nav in our CSS. We'll select it, and then I believe that those highlights are on the anchor element. So nav lia, let's see, nav lia hover. And what are we doing on the Smells Like Bacon site? There's actually no hover state there at all, so we just want to kind of remove all of that styling altogether if we can. So we'll be fairly explicit about it. Looks like there is no kind of active class there. In fact, we don't even need this last class anymore, so we'll get rid of that. That's nice to remove stuff. And let's see, that should do it. That should be all the selectors we need. Then we just need to say background none. Let's see if that does it. Yep, looks good. And then we need to just change the color. And the color should be the same as the rest of the website. So that hexadecimal value, nice. And then we need to increase the font size a little bit. So font size should be like 1M by default. So if we bump that up a little bit, looks pretty much the same to me. And then we can use those text align classes, I think. Let's see if that will do it for us. If we go to typography and we scroll down here, there should be that text right. You know what? This actually probably isn't going to work, but we'll try it anyway. Yeah, I didn't think that was going to work. We actually probably need to pull this column over a bit. So that's where we need to use those helper classes. So pull left, I think, is what we want to use, or pull right, excuse me. So let's see if it does it, if we do that. There we go, cool. And now we just need to add some margin to the top of the navigation element. So we'll put that in there, margin top. And we'll add like 50 pixels. Is that getting us anywhere close? Close. Let's try 100. That's close enough for me. Oops, excuse me. Back and forth, back and forth. Which one is the real one? Okay. We also need to apply that font to our H1s. And oh, hey, look, we're missing that button. We need to add in that button. So let's apply the fonts first. So I want to grab this, and I'm a little surprised the font actually isn't being applied. Let me see if Bootstrap is being more explicit about the font it's using. Yes, it is. See, look at that. It's being pretty explicit about applying this font. So we just want to grab that selector, and we're going to go ahead and override it. So let's see here. We want this guy here, and we want to stick that there. There we go. And by the way, the thing that I just pulled up is called the inspector. You can just hit Command Option I. I believe it's Control Alt I on Windows, and that will bring up the inspector. You can click on this little spyglass. This is in Google Chrome, but it works in most other browsers very similarly. You can also go up to, I think it's View, Developer, and Developer Tools. And if you don't have this developer menu, you can go ahead and enable it in Preferences. Cool. So we have that font being applied to our headline elements. That's nice. We are getting close to an hour here. We're at we're at 48 minutes in. So I'm just going to go for a couple more minutes here and get as far as I can, and then we'll take some questions. So let's try to add in that button there. I want to see if I can restyle a Bootstrap button. So we have this text here. It's a bit large. I think I'd actually rather use an H2 there. Let's see if that... Oops. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That was really strange. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that H2 is a little bit closer to the font size that we're seeing there. But now we want to go ahead and add in that button. It says browse our cupcakes. So that's what it looks like on the site now. I want to use a Bootstrap button though. So CSS, buttons, default button. Actually, I want to use, actually default is fine. Cool. And that comes right after this guy here. Excuse me. There it is. Oh, I can't click on my text apparently. There we go. Okay. And what does it say? Browse our cupcakes. Browse our cupcakes. Okay, we have a button there. So far, so good. I'm going to add another class here, and hopefully that will override stuff, but we'll call it, trying to think of a non-generic but still generic name. I think button would work. Let's just call it CTA button, which is like call to action button. And we'll go ahead and style it here. So CTA button. And we should have some styling in here already. Yeah, look at that. Just go ahead and copy that in. And that should override pretty much everything that we need it to. There we go. And it looks like there's still a border on it. So border none. Nice. And the font size is a little bit small. So font size 1M should be default. Yep. So if we say font size 1.1, it should be a little bit larger. Cool. So we could go ahead and fix the the grid down here. Let me just see if I can find the border styles for that really quick. It's really bothering me personally. Yeah, looks like they have some stuff here already. So let's see how far that gets us. Not far at all. Was it because we don't have those IDs on there anymore? That's probably what it is. Yeah, it looks like the IDs aren't there. Oh well, that's okay. You get the idea. That's pretty much how you can put together layouts like this one pretty quickly with Bootstrap. We came pretty close. I mean, it's not spot on, but it's close enough. And with some more work, we could further kind of massage some of these issues down here and make it a little better. Now, the cool thing about this is it should be responsive-ish. Yeah, look at that. It's pretty responsive already, and that's because we're using Bootstrap's grid system, which is not something that we get here. This site isn't responsive at all. So on a phone, it would just look like the full website here. You wouldn't get a nice kind of mobile optimized experience, whereas you do with Bootstrap. So look at that, pretty cool. Responsiveness built in for free. All right, that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead and take some questions now. I'm just going to go ahead and hop into Hip Chat here. We have one of our staff members, Chris Zabriskie, taking your questions from YouTube, and he's putting them into Hip Chat for me, so I don't have to kind of scroll through the YouTube feed where I'm sure you're all making fun of my faux hawk. It's okay. Go ahead. So first up, we have a couple questions from throughout the stream. Jack mentioned that Bootstrap 3 still feels a little heavy for mobile design. Thoughts? That's fair. But let me go ahead and look at the actual size of Bootstrap here. Let's see. Where did we download it? Oh, probably in downloads. There we go. So distribution. Actually, let's just hit the info on the distribution here. So with CSS, JavaScript, and fonts and all, we're looking at 492 kilobytes. That's not too bad. And in fact, that's actually double because we're including the full version and the minified version. If you just look at the minified version of Bootstrap with just the CSS, it's 98K. The JavaScript is 29K. You do have to account for jQuery, but jQuery, is included on so many websites already that it's probably already cached. So you don't really need to worry about that a whole lot. I mean, I don't think it's too heavy for mobile. I think phones can handle it. The thing to be more concerned about is loading up a ton of image assets. There's tons of other things that you can go ahead and optimize, but Bootstrap is built with mobile phones in mind, and it's a good question to ask because I'm going to need a citation on this one, but I think we're at like some sort of inflection point right now where there's actually more people browsing the web with mobile devices and tablets than there are with desktop browsers. I'm not sure where I read that, so don't quote me on that. But if we haven't hit that inflection point already, we're very, very close to it. So it's important to always consider mobile devices, and that means considering the load time especially. eBirth says, I normally use Foundation by Zurb, but I've been having issues with their mobile-first approach. Can the responsive media queries be disabled in Bootstrap? I don't know. I actually have no idea. I'm sorry I can't be of more help with that. Joshua says, Joshua would like to know how Bootstrap 3 compares to other CSS templating tools like Foundation. I think it kind of depends on the project, personally. I think it's hard to say, whether one is really better than the other. That just kind of, It just kind of depends on your goals for the project and your own personal style. Some people prefer working with Zurb, some people prefer working with Bootstrap. You should try both to see which one kind of suits your own style better. If, say, your goal is to make the fastest load time possible, and load times are really, really important to you, you may want to look at the different assets included with both Zurb and Bootstrap. You may want to kind of weigh them against one another and decide, like this one actually has significantly less kilobytes. I don't know that for sure. I'm just making this up. But there's a lot of different factors to consider, and it really depends on the project to determine which would be better. And of course, there's tons of other CSS frameworks out there as well that you should take a look at. So, next question, I'm going to butcher this name. I'm sorry. It's Eunice. Eunice would like it if you could talk about responsiveness in Bootstrap while you're coding. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we kind of already touched on that. Cool. Excuse me. Sean asked why you wouldn't create a row for your navigation. I think we ended up doing that, didn't we? Pretty sure. Sorry, I'm getting these questions kind of towards the end. These were questions that were asked at the beginning. Yes, we did. I just skipped over it because I'm a crazy person. Okay, back to the chat here. Louisa would like it if you could go through some of the unnecessary Bootstrap files you skipped over at the beginning. So there's not really any files in Bootstrap that are unnecessary. I see what you're talking about, though. You're talking about let me go ahead and open this up here. So, if I go to downloads and I open up Bootstrap, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. If you just look at some of these files, they're actually pretty similar to, that's kind of what I figured would happen. That's what happens when you don't have a HTTP server running, but it should basically just load up this website. So a lot of these files here are actually just the site that you're seeing here. It's literally the entire Bootstrap project. If you open up less here, you can see how to actually work with Bootstrap using less. So less compilation. If you download the original files, which we've done, you need to compile Bootstrap's less files into usable CSS. To do that, Bootstrap only supports Recess, Twitter CSS Hinter, built on top of less.js. So you would actually compile the CSS file that we used using these less files. So there's a bunch of stuff in here. It's really just for people that might need to really dig into Bootstrap and really get more involved with the particulars of the project, or they might have very customized needs. So that's all that's really in there. Obai asked why you wouldn't use HTML5 tags. The code looks like a soup of divs, he says. I would have to agree. There's probably a bunch of places that I could have used HTML5 tags in there, such as article, section, header, footer. In fact, we could have used a header pretty easily. I was moving fairly quickly, but yes, you would definitely want to use more HTML5 tags when you can. Not for functionality reasons, not because the site's going to look any different necessarily or function any different, but because it would be slightly more semantic. And that's kind of a larger discussion we don't have time to go into here, but yes, you would want to use more HTML5 tags. So well spotted. Theo mentioned the hide text probably didn't work because you added it to the div, not the h1. That's probably correct. I should have realized that. Thank you for pointing that out, Theo. Danan, I think is how you say it. Danan asked if using a framework like Bootstrap is a good idea for a brand new web designer, or is building something from scratch the best way to start? That's an interesting question. I do think it is good for a new web designer to get into HTML and CSS in kind of the most plain vanilla way possible, just so that you have a really strong, I guess, kind of core foundation as to what it is that you're actually doing with a more complex framework like Bootstrap. So we teach all of that on Treehouse. So if you head over to teamtreehouse.com, we just built the Build a Simple Website project in Bootstrap. But we teach how to build that just using some very simple HTML and CSS. We do use a little bit of a grid system, but it's very, very light in comparison to what Bootstrap is, as you saw. But after that, yeah, I mean, if I'm starting a new web project and I'm going to be building a new website, I would most definitely be attracted to, something like Bootstrap or something like Zurb Foundation. So yes, it's definitely a good idea to use that once you're more advanced. So last question here. We're at just a little bit over an hour. Would you recommend Bootstrap for a single page app? If yes, would you do the nav bar with another external jQuery plugin like One Page Nav? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, you could mix and match so many different things with Bootstrap. Well, Bootstrap does not officially support extensions. They do, I think, kind of show you on the site how you can extend it to some degree or another. Let's see here, but customizing Bootstrap. Oh, actually, that's not what we want. That is if you want to strip down Bootstrap a little bit more to make it more performant. But anyway, yes, you could go ahead and use other jQuery plugins, all sorts of stuff with Bootstrap. So say, for example, you wanted to create a one-page site with fixed navigation where you click the links and it scrolls to a certain position on the page. Absolutely, Bootstrap would be a great way to do that. In fact, I'm kind of wondering if the JavaScript components included would help you do that. I think so, yeah. Actually, there's already one built in. So, Bootstrap's pretty amazing in how much it already provides for you, but also in how flexible it is to be used with other things. So I think that's pretty much it. That was our last question. We're at just over an hour. I'm Nick Pettit. Again, I am at NickRP on Twitter, and I'm a web design teacher at Treehouse, which you can check out at teamtreehouse.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you real soon.